And when the highest ranking prelate, the highest ranking member of the clergy, takes the kind of hit that he has this year, and to some extent, I suppose from the law tube point of view, you had this continuing continental drift. We whatever fissures showed themselves to exist in 2022 have become full-fledged, chasms. I mean, there are people who were appearing on screens together and slapping each other on the back.
2 years ago, yeah, people who were hanging out like brothers 2 years ago.
Absolutely, like at risk of choking each other if they were in the same room.
Yeah.
But I got to say that I do not like to participate in that type of stuff. But I will also say
I'm not important enough, so it's easy for me to.
That's why you're here, Steve.
Yeah,
that's why you're here.
I know, but I really,
but Andrew sent him with a message for you.
Oh, what's that?
He's stirring.
See, now you're picking on the Gentile. See, now I am the lone Gentile.
Jokes.
Okay.
He's making
you and your jokes. All right. So here, because there's people that revel in the suffering of others. Something I've learned this year is that there are people who really don't have a purpose in life other than hatred. I mean, their hatred is in their hearts, and their identity is identified for what they want to hurt and destroy, and they actually take pleasure in it. That
has been a really big part of YouTube for a long time, right? I mean, aren't the beef?
It's not just YouTube though. It's across the society. I mean, I'm dealing with.
So social media gives people license to treat each other in ways that they mostly only think about treating each other. In other words, I mean, everything that we're seeing in on X, like on the right on X, there's the bloodbath has been extraordinary the last couple of weeks. People are doing things that, if you have any familiarity with human relations, if you've ever worked as a professional, anything, any real life, that all kinds of terrible things get done by people to other people. But it's accelerated on social media because the things that you would only think about doing but would never dare do, you do, not you and I, and certainly not Joe, but people do on social media. And things just happen faster and more transparently, and there's this distance, and yet there's this closeness. We have a concept, Steve, in Jewish sensibility called Karivas Hadas, which means people's mental soul lives touching. People communicate electronically in ways that they would never dare do on in meat space, because it's just so incredible. It would be much too intimate.
But I have some thoughts on that. Because I think that and that is true. That is true. That is a phenomenon of the internet age. But I would suggest that as people, and I think that you both of you I consider moral brethren, right? But if you're afraid to do something to write to somebody's face, if you wouldn't say it to their face, or you wouldn't, then you should not put it in writing. You shouldn't say it to somebody else, and you shouldn't hide behind an anonymous blog symbol.
You're so right. But Steve, here's the thing. What do we do? There is definitely value added. And I have raged about this. That's my position. There is definitely value added by anonymous commentary. But I think the way to satisfy both those interests is you have to say, you can comment, but when you cross that line of saying something that you wouldn't say to my face, like you're saying, Steve, that's when you, as an anonymous poster, you got to sit down. You can give me your point of view, but if you're going to start calling me names, you're going to start calling me racial epithets. You're going to, question, my professional ability or my morale. You're going to say stuff that if it was in person, I'd pop you in the nose. Joe,
you know what it is this? It's the difference between using anonymity as a shield versus as a sword, right? I mean,
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. If you're using your anonymity so that you're not going to be harassed or have risk at your job or something like that, and that's why you're basking your anonymity, that is an appropriate use of anonymity. When you're using your anonymity to say, now I can lunge at people and stab them without any accountability, and I can use my anonymity as a sword that I don't have to face any repercussions, that no one's going to know it's really me, that's when anonymity is toxic. So is that a good way?
But there's a correlated point to this too. That is interesting. And I want to add to that because we have open records laws, we have sunshine laws, we have this sort of thing, right? And a lot of government institutions, they see this as a challenge, and so they create these private servers and they communicate outside the regular things. They go and they talk and they whisper and they do notes, and they look at this sunshine laws and open records as a thwarting of what they really want to do. So they do it whisper, whisper, whisper. I would suggest that the proper response is to not, if you have a problem putting it in writing, if you have a problem communicating it, and having it say, then maybe you shouldn't put it on there. Maybe you shouldn't whisper it in the ear of somebody else. Maybe that's a clue that what you're saying is poisonous and wrong, and you need to rethink it or rephrase it. Because I found that I will say that there are certain governmental institutions that I'm very familiar with that see the whole public records law as this enemy, rather than saying, you know what, maybe we need to look inside our hearts and ourselves and engage and be upfront and be honest in all of our dealings. I'm just throwing it out as maybe a New Year's Eve resolution type thing.
Look at that. Look at this. We're turning into the channel of morality, and I'm proud to wear that banner. So
well, because we're about to enter into a new era of morality. In all seriousness, there should be a certain amount of retribution dished out, but it should be done transparently. And that will make it the retribution of justice. That will be, because retribution, unlike what many soft-brained people think, societal retribution is a legitimate end of justice, of the process of justice. Society needs to see its values vindicated and its victimizers punished. And don't give me any of this turn the other cheek stuff, okay? We're trying to run a society.
I have a big question about this, and I'll tell you, speaking to my Jewish friends here, I need to talk to my priest, because there is the turn your other cheek. Isn't that's sort of a Christian principle, right? And that kind of we take, but the problem is that the seculars use that as a weapon against the faithful. And it's like they use your own morality against you. And a lot of Christians don't fully know their faith. They don't really understand it kind of complete and whole or as in depth. And they hear that and they're like, yeah, turn the other cheek. That means that you can punish me and attack me endlessly, and there will never be retribution. And I don't think that that's justified. I don't think that's a Christian thought.
Well, it's not only that. When you are kind to the wicked, you end up being wicked to the kind.
Well, very good. Exactly.
You are morally obligated to protect yourself and your family, and by extension, those closest to you, and in a correspondingly reduced but still meaningful concentric circle. It starts with your home and your family, your kin, your clan, yes. And that's why nationalism is a thing. That's why you're entitled to have borders, and that's why you're entitled to have walls. That's why you're entitled to have fences and gates.
Right.
I mean, we don't want to get into into religious, none of us is qualified here.
I had a friend who was very Catholic, who kind of, before I was Catholic.
How Catholic was he?
Oh, he was very more like the. Anyways, he always said, like, they're invisible. Look here, we have mysterious ghosts. And he always said something to me that struck. And he's like, well, people, there's this secular thing. Don't talk about religion with your friends, and right, don't talk about more of that sort of. And he's like, no, but I love you as a brother and a friend, and that's the most important thing that I can possibly talk to you about. Why would I not? Why would a friend, as a friend, why would I not talk to you about the most important things, your soul and the salvation and living a good life and having a fruitful life? Those are important. But instead, people are so afraid to talk morality and religion.
Steve, you're 100% right. So my teacher, Rabbi Noach Weinberg, people used to say to him, he ran a yeshiva for people like me who didn't grow up like Joe did with an adequate religious education, unlike Joe, who did. And people would ask, well, what should I do? I get it, and I'm committed, and I've learned a whole bunch of stuff. Now I'm going to go back home to my parents and my friends, and what should I do with them? And he says, well, do you love them? Do you care about them? If you do, then you're going to have to make some effort at having a good influence on them, not to the extent that you're going to put them off. The thing is, Steve, a lot of people can't have these discussions because of insecurity, because of their lack of let's put it this way. Most people who argue against religious belief, and let's be very clear, Christians and Orthodox Jews have more in common theologically than non-religious Jews and Orthodox Jews. Because
that's a very good point.
Because Christians
and Joe and I've had long discussions on these similarities. It's amazing. Right. Well, when I tell him about this stuff, he's like, "That's just like this Jewish tradition."
Believe in the Torah. That
right.
Whereas Reformed Jews don't. They think it was something made up in so
they think it's a fairy tale.
The whole thing.
But they think it's a fairy tale that was written for the purposes of conveying certain values or mores, and that there's nothing truthful about it.
It's not right. It's not revealed divine truth.
Right, and as opposed
to what you're saying, Ron, is
recognizes divinity. So.
Ron is right on the money, and what you're saying is humility. Humility is the key to wisdom, and people come at it. They think, I'm ignorant or they're arrogant. Either way, the right perspective is to say there's something to be learned here, and come at it with humility and openness. Because the first commandment is the most important. Put no other God before me. And the thing is that people put so much idolatry in the society. They put ego, self, power, money. There's all these idols rather than God. And if you don't have God at the center of the universe, there is something there. You just haven't identified it. So people are religious.
And the thing is, Steve, that you and I and Joe can have this discussion because none of us is threatened by it, because we understand the boundaries. What are we're familiar enough with your faith to know where it can't be common ground. But people who are who are non-believers. Oh, so actually, the point I really was going to make was that most people who start up with religious believers do not do so from a position of any particular form of belief. They reserve the right to be skeptical and cynical about every theoretical construct you can come up with, because they're not taking any position. And that's a kind of intellectual terrorism, because it's always easy to destroy. Look at what terrorists can do to undermine a society, to undermine a region. Easier to destroy than to build. Tell me what you've got. Tell me what you've got. You want to go with vast nothingness and everything in this whole world completely arbitrary. And, okay, listen, you've got lots of company if that's your position. Okay, but you gotta set down somewhere. I hope somebody more fun is going to pop in soon, Joe, because
I love these. I love this. Is
killing your people.
No, you guys, I think this is wonderful, man. I
No,
love
you're
talking to you guys.
You're killing my mojo here. I'm not going to kid you. It's like every I'm kidding. No, I actually enjoy having these conversations, and this is one of the reasons I love having Steve on here because we frequently
I love his house. I mean, look at that. I mean,
yeah, no, it's
the Jewish summer home for Joe. You see, this is what it is. He's letting me stay here for the New Year's.
Let me get to some of these super chats here because they have been building up for a little while here, and I feel guilty. But the first one I want to get to is this one, which was not the earliest one in the thing. But I think this is a fair question that Joe is asking here, which is: our founders often publish all manner of criticism anonymously. How were they wrong or how were they right? Franklin was polite while Hamilton was harsh, and so on. What I would say, as far as our founders, is that there's two different time periods, right? There's before the Revolutionary War and then there's after the Revolutionary War. Before the Revolutionary War, it was literally a matter of life and death. That's using your anonymity as, for the most part, as a shield so that, you're not going to be hanged. Right. So, I mean, but then you can say, well, what about to the degree that they may have used it after that was the British were no longer a threat, and to the degree that they used it then, I mean, I don't know whether or not that they continued in that vein after. I mean, Hamilton was writing anonymously. That was likely after the British.
Look, there's a legitimate, as I said before, there's a legitimate place for anonymity, but keep in mind, you do have to keep the. On the one hand, I want to say you have to consider the cultural and the technological context, how different they are. When the founding fathers would write the Federalist Papers, under assumed names, they would write something out, they would read a draft, they would take it to the printer, who would be a trusted person. It would be distributed among a discrete group of people. There was also a sense that this was a community in which most people pretty much knew who was who, probably. And to some extent, it wasn't this free-for-all that we have today, where you can ruin somebody's life. I mean, we're talking, they were discussing philosophical and political concepts, not who banged who, or who's being paid by the Chi-Coms, and all this junk that comes out anonymously. But on the other hand, there are a lot of really valuable contributors to the conversation on X and on YouTube and other places today who are anonymous. I'm not going to deny that, but like I said, I think you have to. I think your questioner, Joseph, asked the right question, and the answer is what Steve and I were saying a few minutes ago. You can have that privilege until you get to the point where you're going to start saying stuff to me that you wouldn't say to me in person.
All right. I think that's a fair.
It's a rule of thumb. It's obviously impossible to enforce.
No. Allegan News asks, how does prior Congress have authority to make rules for new Congress? Electoral Count Act, not constitutional. This is going back to when I missed this a long time ago when Sybil was saying how they changed the rules for challenging. I don't know if you guys heard this. They changed the rules for challenging the electoral count. That what they said was that you are that now you need 20% to challenge a particular state, not just one senator and one member of the House. Can you imagine trying to get 20 senators on board? You can't even get one of these, and you're going to try and get 20 of them.
I don't know the answer to this question. I think they can make any rule they want, and then the next Congress can unmake it.
The same way they could pass any law that would bind the next Congress. I don't think that's really. I don't think
they
that's
cannot.
Really...
They can't do that. No, they can't. The Congress can't bind over the next Congress. The next Congress can undo it, just as a matter of course. So I don't know where is that coming from. What are they saying that the Electoral College is in the Constitution? So Congress can't change the Constitution unless they follow the amendment procedures in the Constitution.
Well, the question would be whether it was a rule that was passed by the Senate or whether that's a law that was passed and signed off on by the president, right? Because you can.
But the Congress. Congress can't make a law that overrides the Constitution. The Senate can make its own rules. That is correct, and it is a co-equal branch of government. But
Mm.
as far as I don't know where we're getting in a rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
Hey, Ron, check the private chat too.
This rebrand is going down like Coke. That's not true. SCOTUS Savant is the perfect nickname for uncivil law. But what else do we have here? I dislike all Jew jokes. My great uncle died in concentration camp. He got drunk and fell from a guard. That's cute. That's good.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one,
bad.
actually. Yes.
Scrotum Savant. Who's going to drink until you can't walk tonight? Don't drive. Not necessarily me, but that could happen if people start buying me drinks. My drink price is very expensive. Fletcher guys says, guys, entertain me tonight. My lady friend is in Aspen for the week. Look, we're not going to entertain you the way she would. Okay, that's not going to happen. But hopefully it's the next best. It's the most fun you can have while wearing pants. I've gotten a broken wrist, so I can't play, and I don't want to go tonight. P.S. I got a nice bottle of Weller bourbon. Cheers. Cheers to you, Fletcher boy. Happy New Year. Savant Kurt of the United States. You went full Jew. Never go full Jew. That's not cool. That's not cool. I
don't think there's much we can do about that.
Super chats earn interest until red. That's the little known fact. Hopefully no Ricardo tonight. If so, I'm not going to worry about people unsubbing if you don't like my guests. But I don't know that he's coming, but he has.
But another thing about I have another bone to pick with you guys, you people on there in the internet, and that is that how is it that we came about that every person that's on next to a little square next to me is now I endorse every one of their views and everything they've ever done in their life and all this sort of, and that I am so morally perfect that that I only associate with perfect people. I mean, clearly the three of us disagree on a very foundational and fundamental issue, right? However, I still love you and respect you and admire you and look for the best and want the best for you. And the fact is that if we disagree on any particular topic, we have respect for each other. How is it all of a sudden, Ghazni hangs out with this guy and he endorses because Joe said something. He didn't stand up and storm off the set because Joe said that he's a Jew and he doesn't believe that Christ, it's like, well, of course he doesn't. Why do I have to agree with everything? How is it that it became this guilt by association world? I'm sorry, Ron, you're muted.
And I'll tell you something else on that.
Which is ideal. It's perfect.
What's that? Right. I didn't hear anything you said.
But I was muted. That's what was perfect.
I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about this. I get along with people who might despise each other, and part of the deal that everyone understands as far as being mature adults is just because I get along with someone you might have a personal gripe with, or might be in a feud with, that doesn't mean that should affect our relationship. If it does, that's on you. That's not on me. And I'm not gonna. And that's one thing I want to get off my. For example, a perfect example is Nick and potentially Criminal Sean. They're both welcome on my channel. I like and respect them both. I know that they don't like each other. I get that. But they've always treated me as a friend, and I will continue to treat anyone who treats me as a friend. That's just what you do. That's part of being a friend. So
that's right. I agree with you 100%. And I'm not nearly as close to Nick as you are, but I've let him know that I'm on his side. Does that mean I'm on his side as against the interest of the state in making sure that his children are safe? Does that mean I'm on his side as against the people in the soap opera? No. What it means is we're friends.
Right.
And
you're on the side as a human being.
I'm sorry, Steve?
You're on the side as a human being who wants the best for a fellow human being. Why don't we all want that?
Well,
don't we want the best
what the
for
narrative
each other?
was, though? I remember now that what the narrative was. Who among us, the question was, who among us is enabling him? Enabling him. Right? And who among us has and has not adequately told him off and told him to stop? And hey, dude, You don't get credit.
but people like, why do I need to do that on stream in front of everybody? Who's
Exactly.
to say what I do between one-on-one? Because I would much rather say it to the person directly, and that's not for public consumption. It doesn't make it. That's just simply an ego stroking, moral superiority trumpeting, like, look what I'm doing because I'm standing up against it. No, if you've got a problem with somebody, and maybe I do, maybe I don't know, but you talk to that person directly and directly alone. You don't talk to them through the internet or through a group scolding. That's just moral superiority. Hey, Solomon. Hey, they're good to see you, man. I loved your tweets, by the way.
I got
Everything you tweet.
Solomon walking into to Law 2 drama. I'll share with you this thought
Corn
also
Pope.
to bring it out into a broader spectrum. Okay, when it comes to just MAGA in general, forget about the personal relationships in this genre or fans of this channel versus that channel. Forget that for a moment. Just in the broader genre, MAGA and people who identify as being MAGA are entering a new chapter now, coming into as of January 20th, 2025. I mean, to some degree already now by dint of winning the election. And that is, we went from the powerless oppressed who were bandying together for the purposes of removing a wannabe tyrannical, if not actually tyrannical government. Not tyrannical. I don't like, it's definitely not fascistic, but with tendencies and leanings towards tyranny, to this new stage where now our political leaders, the people we support, are the ones who are going to have charge of every branch of government. And that now puts us in a completely different realm where it's far more difficult to stay cohesive when you're being shelled and shellacked and you're being attacked from all sides. So it's very easy for those who feel that boot of oppression to bandy together and put aside their differences, because that's survival.
Band together.
No, not band together, because they're jointly feeling the boot of oppression or the threat of a boot of oppression, and that makes them cling together to support each other, because they know, if I don't stand up for him, I might be next. There's a certain self-interest there which helps everyone join together and put aside their differences. Okay. When that boot is removed, and now we have the seat of power, which we have the White House, you have the Senate, you have the House, and we even have, for crying out loud, some people believe that we have SCOTUS. So between having all of that political clout, it is much easier to pick and nitpick and to turn against each other and to say, basically, oh, if you disagree with me, you're now a rhino. You're now a globalist. You're a terrible human being because you disagree with me about HB1 or debt ceiling or whatever 100 issues are going to come up over the next 4 years. So, and that's the one, and I'm urging those of you who identify as MAGA to put that aside. If you want to label some congressman, some senator as being a rhino because of their positions, and they actually display rhino tendencies or globalist tendencies, that's fine. That's appropriate. That's a call to have them removed and primaried out, and one way or another, identify people who are holding back America from rising to the greatness that it has the possibility of attaining. But if you're just talking to someone who disagrees with you about whether or not we should have 50,000 legal immigrants come in here over HB1, or you're disagreeing about whether or not we should be critical of Trump and his approach, and you're saying, how dare you question Trump, or you're on the side of Trump, and or you're the side against Trump, or you're saying, oh, Trump is a turncoat and he's turning on us. Whatever way it is, this is not healthy. Your criticism should be constructive. Don't start labeling people rhino or globalist or whatever. You can disagree and say, they're still my friend. I'm still on your side. I still recognize you. I still recognize your value. I think on this particular issue, much as Steve and I can disagree about certain issues, Salman and I might disagree about certain issues, I'll still always consider them a friend. When it's a political issue, it's harder to maintain that when you don't talk to them face to face. You just talk to them on social media or whatever.
There are a lot of people who and including some I'm very friendly with, who have really gotten into the habit of going directly to rather intense escalation on a personal level very, very quickly. And it makes me want to spend less time engaging with them. What else can I say?
Yeah.
You know,
I think that that's the key difference that we see. And, Joe, I don't know if how many of my tweets that you've seen. I mean, Steve made a comment about it. I've been actively talking about some of these things. I actually tried to post about the H1B issue. And the reality is that the vast majority of us actually agree that there's some reform. There's some issues with the H1B visa execution, just in the public scope and how it's being used and abused by corporations and the government both, right? I think that we need to revisit that. I think it's an intelligent thing to say that there's some issues with how the H1Bs are being doled out, but it's complete preposterous nonsense to say that it needs to end completely and that all immigrants are the enemy of Americans. I mean, I think I had commented about how even fundamentally the invention of nuclear fission was because of Operation Paperclip, was because we brought brilliant minds into the United States. The magnet mindset of bringing the best of the best into America to make sure that we can continue to innovate faster than anyone else, to continue to grow intellectual property here stateside, only propagates more success for all Americans and increases the quality of life for all of us. It's ridiculous to try and argue any other way.
And here's the thing: when once we're on H1B, I'll just point this out. I happen to not be a fan of H1B. I think O1 is much. I think O1 is fine and good. H1B, I'm not a fan of. But I can also recognize the significance of the battle or the relative insignificance of this particular battle. There are literally 400 illegal aliens for every one person who has H1B, because there's like 50,000 a year, right, which come in on H1B, and there's 20 million illegal aliens in this country that have accumulated over the last 6 to 8 years. Most of them during this current administration. So I mean, there's literally 400 illegal people here for every one legal person who came here under H1B. This is like you have a tidal wave that's hitting a house, and you're complaining about a leaky faucet. And like you're saying, oh my gosh, we have to get rid of this leaky faucet. You have a freaking tidal wave. We're all on the same page that this tidal wave has to be stopped. And that's why I think making such a big to do, even though I think that the leaky faucet should be fixed and it should be, perhaps that spigot should be completely shut off. And I disagree with Elon about this topic the same way most of you do. But the fact of the matter is, let's recognize it for the fact that it's 1/400th of the problem up to what we're actually dealing with here. And just because we disagree with him on this one thing, you know what? Let's worry about the other 400 for every one of the H1B people, rather than sitting here and saying, how dare Elon say that? It's like let's pick where we're attacking people. Let's make sure. I don't like the way he reacted to this. I think the way he reacted to the criticism he got was terrible, awful, pathetic, a joke, embarrassing to Elon. The way he went after Laura Loomer and countless others by basically punishing them for disagreeing with him. I think that was terrible and borderline tyrannical. You want to criticize for that? That was way wrong, much more wrong than the H1B issue. But as far as that H1B issue is, and my point is that I don't want us to start like just turning fingers on everyone saying you're a globalist, you're a rhino, you're whatever, because you disagree with me on one particular issue, another issue. We need to try and stay as cohesive as possible if we're going to be successful in actually turning America in the right direction, rather than just relying on this last election and say, oh, well, that's it, game's over, we won, and now everything's fine. We're a long way from fine. And we need to stay cohesive. And the only way we could do that is by ensuring that our debate remains political rather than personal. And it remains logic-based rather than just emotion, or my guy says this, your guy says that, and therefore I'm right, you're wrong. Critically analyze, engage in thought, and actually, assess your position based on what is logical, not based on who tells you that, and certainly never make it personal against some other no name. I'm a no name in this realm. I'm a complete and total no name, and so are likely you. It's very unlikely that you who are watching now are someone who is a name, and you're probably interacting 1,000 times with no names for every time that you actually interact with someone who is a name.
Not only no names, you may very well be interacting with AI bots. I mean, people are starting to look into this and realize that seem to be a very good possibility that a lot of bots that are actually responding with quasi on point responses to you are garbage, and a lot of them are coming out of Pakistan and probably Iran. But I mean, it's just pure subversion. I just retweeted this earlier today. Someone came up with some calculation that half the accounts on X now are phony.
No way.
I mean, I'd like to see actual data and metrics on
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I
a
don't
lot of people are
know if I'll
running
be able to find it
multi-accounts.
again, but wild stuff.
All right, I got to catch up. I want to hear from you, Solomon, and what's going on with Zachariah. If you have any sort of developments that you could tell us as to where he's looking at coming into 2025, whether what type of whether there's what efforts are being done to perhaps have Trump commute or pardon your brother. And in case you're unfamiliar with who Solomon Anderson is, his brother Zachariah Anderson, who was convicted in one of the most abusive, lawfare, ridiculous lack of evidence that they convicted him of murder without a drop of blood, of a murder weapon or anything, and it's embarrassing how they turned our legal system on its head to try and find some way to convict him, and the prosecutor there was ridiculously abusive. I had him on here, I think in 2023. And he walked us through all of the different, all the terribleness of the way that trial was conducted. And that's why he has freezachariahanderson.org. And I urge people to give there generously if they can to help support the efforts to have Zachariah released. But
Solomon,
I'd love to hear
what's
from
your
you.
account, Solomon, on X?
It's my name, Solomon Anderson. I think it's Solomon A-N-D.
No, it's not, because then you have too many people with the same name.
Yeah, there are. I think it's Solomon.
I'm no
A-N-D
dummy. That's the first
13.
place I look.
Oh.
Let me get some chats. You guys can do that backstage.
I'll see if I can find it.
Joe, I'm happy New Year to everybody. Solomon, I'm nice meeting you. Nice meeting you. Maybe you'll come on my podcast too and help spread the word. He
happens to be I don't know if he was like this before the trial, but he's become very well versed in how trials are supposed to operate. I was blown away by the fact that you have no legal background, formal training at all.
Well, and that's better than being a judge. They're not the least bit versed in it.
And he's
good night,
very
everybody.
well versed.
Steve, great seeing you again. Solomon, nice meeting you. We'll do
I
more.
appreciate you stopping in here, brother.
Everybody.
Happy New Year.
Right, Happy New Year, Ron. So where we're at with the appeal, Natalie and Zach are working very closely. Zach, of course, is very intelligent and has been spending as much time as he can at the legal library digging up Supreme Court precedents, federal court jurisdiction precedents, and other case law to try and make the best possible argument, because we don't want like a harmless error analysis to boot us right out of the appellate process, or for some sort of key item to be overlooked as it escalates through different tiers of the court to make it to the federal level, for them to then dismiss everything, send it back to the trial court for it to be readdressed.
Right.
So it's a meticulous, really a trial of patience during this time period as the post-conviction motion gets written. And I know that different states do it a little bit differently. To my understanding, in the state of Wisconsin, we have the opportunity to overturn the decision by the court in the trial court with the post-conviction motion. There's no limit to the word count on that. But we get to go and make these arguments and try and convince the judge to then vacate the verdict, and then either dismiss the whole thing with prejudice or to justify a retrial. Now, the good thing that's happened